Okay, students. Now this is 4.6 Systems of Inequality. So again, we learned about inequalities, linear inequalities, and we learned how to graph a linear inequality based on the slope and the y-intercept. And then we talked about the symbols, and if we use a dash or dotted line based on whether it's a greater than or less than symbol. For a dashed line, a greater than or equal to symbol, like here, that would be a solid line. So if I see this symbol, I'm going to use a dashed line. This symbol means a solid line. With the symbol being less than, y is less than, this symbol means I'm going to shade below that line. With y being greater than, this means I'm going to shade above that line. Alright, so brief review. Now we're going to graph two inequalities on the same coordinate plane. This is called a system of inequalities. So on the first one, I know that my slope is 2 and my y-intercept is 0, -4. So I'm going to graph this line using the red marker. With the symbol, this means I'm going to use a solid line and I'm going to shade below. So let's go ahead and graph that. -4. And I'm going to go up 2, right 1. I'm going to continue that. Alright, and I'm going to have a solid line. And I said I'm going to shade below that solid line because of the symbol given to me. So I'm going to shade down here. Okay, next. Next one, I'm going to put on the same coordinate plane. My slope is 1. Let me erase that. I'm going to use a different color. Let's go with blue. Alright, so my slope is -1. Sorry, -1. My y-intercept is 0, 3. Now this is going to be a dashed line because of that symbol. And I'm going to shade above the line because of the symbol. Y is greater than. Alright, so let's graph that. We're starting at +3, and my slope is -1, so I'm going to go down 1, right 1. And we're going to use a dashed line to represent that. I'm also going to shade above that dashed line. I'm going to use a different color here to shade that. Okay, so here we go. Shading above that line. Now, my solution is in the double shaded area, the extra dark area. So I'm going to highlight that solution in a different color. So this would be where my solutions are found. And I can already see that I made a mistake on here. Okay, that first line that I drew, that red line, should be a solid line, which I said should be a solid, so I'm not sure why I didn't do it in a solid. That should be a solid line right here. This one's a solid line. This one is the dash line. I even said it over here, solid. So I apologize for that mistake if I confused you. But this is the solution now. Now when I have two inequalities graphed, my solution is found in the double shaded area. Alright, so we're going to go on to the next problem here. So let me pull up the next example. Here we are with example 2. Okay. So as it says, the overlapping shaded area is the answer to the system of inequality. So both of these are not in slope-intercept form. So I have to solve for y on both equations. So let's start with the first one. I'm going to do the first one in red here. So I'm going to subtract x to both sides. Property of equality. Subtraction, that's 0, so that cancels. I get -2y is greater than -x plus 6. Now I'm going to divide by it -2. Now, when I divide by a negative in an inequality, I have to flip the sign. So y is less than -x divided by -2 is a positive 1/2 x. 6 divided by -2 is -3. So in this equation, my slope is 1/2. My y-intercept is 0, -3. based on the symbol, this is going to be a dashed line, and I'm going to shade below. So let's go through this. So I'm going to start at -3, and I'm going to go up 1, right 2. This is going to be a dashed line. I'm going to shade below this line. Okay. Let's go back to the next example. So now I need to solve for y on this equation, or inequality. Sorry, it's not an equation. So let's subtract x on both sides of the inequality, and I get 2y is less than or equal to -x plus 4. Now my next step, I need to isolate y. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Get y is less than or equal to -1/2 x plus 2. Now you might be asking yourself, why didn't I flip this sign? There's a negative involved and I divided. To divide by a negative means I have to flip the sign. Like here, I divided by a negative number. Or if you multiply by a negative number. Here I divided by a positive number, so I don't have to flip the sign. If a negative is involved, that doesn't mean I flip the sign. It's only if you multiply or divide by a negative number. So no sign flipping going on here. So in this equation, my slope is -1/2. My y-intercept is 0, 2. Based on the symbol, I'm going to have a solid line, and I'm going to shade below. So let's graph this thing. Starting here at 0, 2, I have a negative slope, so I'm going to go down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2. I'm going to have a solid line, and I said I'm going to shade below. So let me get the correct color here. Sorry. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to shade below this line. Alright, so my solutions are found in the double shaded region. So I am going to highlight that double shaded region here. This is where, right here, my solutions will be found because it's double shaded. Alright, so let's move on to the next example. Just going to give me a minute here to pull it up. Alright, this will be the exact last example I go over, and you could try the next one on your own. Now, this one of them is already solved for. Solve for y. I can graph this. This one I do need to solve for y to get it in the slope-intercept form. That way I can graph it. Alright, so let's graph the first one first. My slope is 3. My y-intercept is 0, 1. Based on the symbol, I'm going to have a dashed line, and it's going to be a shade above. So 0, 1. Not sure what just happened there. So 0, 1. I'm going to go up 3, right 1. And I'm going to have a dashed line. And with this, I will shade below. Nope, above, sorry. I'm going to shade above. I'm glad I double checked that. Alright, now for the next equation, we do need to solve for y. So let's subtract x. I'm sorry again, it's not an equation, it's an inequality. We need to solve the inequality for y. Isolate y. We get y is greater than or equal to -x plus 3. So in this equation, my slope is -1. My y-intercept is 3. I'm going to shade below. And this is going to be a solid line. So let's start at 3. And I'm going to go down 1, right 1. Solid line. And I'm going to shade below. So the solutions will be found in the double shaded region. So let's highlight that region. This yellow highlighted area is where both areas are shaded. Everything is double shaded. So any solution I find in this area, any point, any coordinate I find in this area is a solution. Kind of saying that backwards there. So the coordinate right here, -2, 0, is a solution to the inequality because it's in the double shaded area. Alright, so go ahead and try example 4 on your own. When you do finish that, the work problems to go with this is 4.6 in your packet.